Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday coffee chat. I'm so excited that you're here with me, even though I'm not exactly here live. So, I have a special coffee chat topic lined up for you today. What we're going to be talking about is manifesting my best life through Project 48. And I'm going to talk pretty specifically about what manifesting means to me, how I'm planning to focus my energy, why 6 months for life hasn't really worked for me these past couple of years, and why Project 48 feels more inspirational. So, we've talked about this a little before. We're going to go a little deeper into it today. So, normally we have Friday Coffee Chat that is live every Friday at 4 p.m. And today, I am actually in Houston when you're watching this for the Romance Author Mastermind Conference, but I still wanted a chance for us to come together and chat. So, this is the topic that was really on my heart to talk about because it's been on my mind a lot. And so, coffee chat format, but you'll still get to chat. I will try to be in the chat with you, but a little bit different than what we've had in the past. So, also, I hope that you are loving the Spooktacular so far. It has been really fun. I've liked having it spread throughout the month. So, let me know what you've been thinking about having it spread throughout the entire month instead of just those last 13 days of the month. Also, next week at this time, my new book, The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, will be live and out into the world, which just blows my mind. I'm so excited for you to read it. I hope you love it. If you get it and you do enjoy it, please go and leave a review. Please share it with your friends. This is my first book release in like 3.5 years. So I really want to build some positive momentum with this and to get back to, writing and publishing more frequently. And one of the ways that you can help me make that happen is to just support this book as much as you can. So thank you for that. I appreciate you all. I hope you're loving it. Some of you probably have already read it. So no spoilers, but let me know if you loved it. So today, what we're going to talk about is Project 48. And in order to talk about manifesting and Project 48 and why I'm doing this, I want to go kind of all the way back to a discussion of 6 months for life or ways that I have changed my life in the past. And some of this will be stories you've heard before, but sometimes hearing the same story in a different way can trigger a different sort of moment. So let's see how it goes. Now, as a little bit of a trigger warning or content warning, I am going to be talking just a little bit about my own experience with trauma, with house fires, with sexual assault. So if you don't want to have any of that discussion or your kids are listening, we're not going to get any kind of deep into it, but it just might be like listener discretion advised a little bit on this coffee chat as I go into some of my personal stories, which again, I know many of you have heard before, but it's just hearing it in a different context might be meaningful in a different way. So for the past couple of years, I have talked on this channel, probably more like 4 years I've been talking about it, about an initiative, for lack of a better way of explaining it, called 6 months for life. And this was just something that I had decided based on some key moments in my past to think about how if I could just spend 6 straight months focusing on getting rid of things that are toxic in my life, really focusing on setting myself up for better habits, better health, better energy, and get laser focused on the kind of person I want to be, that I know I could change my life significantly. Actually following through with 6 whole months of that has proven to be a lot harder. And it's been easy for me to get myself excited, which is I'm a high futuristic person. I'm always thinking about the future. I'm big on vision. And I know not everybody is like that. But for me, my excitement comes from thinking about what's possible in the future. And so I can get myself super hyped for, oh, this are all the changes I'm going to make. This is the kind of person I'm going to be. This is, all of it. And really, over the course of these 4 years, I have made significant changes in my life. I have really, even 5 years, if you think about it, I have added to our family after years of infertility. We have moved into a dream house. I keep tweaking it to make it even better. I have made, just massive strides in my own ability to show up for myself, in my boundaries. Like I have made progress. So it's just been slow and steady, but I haven't really followed through with an exact 6 months for life. This is the way I want it to be. And the main piece of that I haven't followed through with is focus on my health, because it is much easier for me to focus on the content I'm creating, the lives I'm changing, the work I'm putting out for other people. It's easier to focus on that because there's almost like a barrier between having to face the pieces of myself that I don't like or that I'm ashamed of. It's like easier to like give than it is to shine a mirror back on myself and be like, okay, I have to change. It's just hard. Also, the reason I came up with 6 months for life in the first place is because there have been periods in my life in the past when I have seen that transformation after 6 months. I have worked really hard for 6 months to make massive, true change, and it has like rippling effects for the rest of my life. And so that's why I kept thinking, okay, if I can do it intentionally now, I can make such a big difference, right? But I did have a friend remind me of the fact that those previous examples of when I had gone through the 6 months for life transformations, I only had one child or I had no children. The more children I have, the older they get, the busier life becomes, and the more my focus becomes on them, which is not in any way a complaint or any way of saying, oh, my life is harder. Please don't take it that way. I know sometimes people without kids get sensitive to that. I'm not saying that your life is not difficult because you don't have kids. I'm just saying for my personal experience, having two children, especially now that they're both in like soccer and baseball and they're old enough to understand like how much time I'm spending with them, what I'm prioritizing. It's just taken a bunch of my focus, right? It's like I can focus on my career and my focus goes to all of my students. And then my focus goes to the YouTube content I'm creating and everything that I'm creating, which does feed my soul. I'm doing it for a purpose, but at the same time, it's been a lot easier over the last 4 or 5 years to focus on what I'm giving to everyone else. And I am acutely aware of how that can be misinterpreted 1,000 different ways. And I sincerely, I feel the need often to explain myself, even though I know it's clear to some people. There are always some people that will misunderstand that or feel offended by it or something like that. Because I'm not in any way trying to say, oh, look how amazing I am that I'm giving so much to other people. I'm just trying to say my focus often is to focus on the needs of others before my own. And I think that that is not really all that unusual, especially among moms and especially among women. And I'm not saying there aren't some guys out there who deal with this too, but I don't always spend enough time thinking about what my needs truly are, if that makes sense. I focus on the things I want, but what are the things I need? And how difficult is it going to be to make the choices that need to be made to meet those needs? That is what ultimately this Project 48 is about. And it was what 6 months for life was meant to be about too. But every time I tried to focus on 6 whole months, I started loading myself up with too many habits. Or I've tried to also just very slowly, like, okay, let's just get on the treadmill for 10 minutes and then let's make this one easy change to my diet. And that never ever works. And I know there's a whole book, Atomic Habits, where they talk about like super slow, easy habits. That never once in my life has ever worked for me to build slow habits, because what happens is I start very slowly. Number one, I don't see any momentum. So it starts to feel harder and harder because I'm like, what's the point of doing all this? I'm not seeing any change. Then I get busy or we go on vacation or a book is due and I have to drop all those habits for a little while to just focus on the thing that has to get done or the kid that's sick or the vacation that we're going on. And I fall off on those very slow habits that I've tried to build and they're just gone. And so now it's like, all right, now I have to start over and it's going to take me 5 years to build a habit. And it just has never felt satisfying for me. And I know that some people have had lifelong transformations from building slow habits, but we're all different. And I think that in the end, if you want to manifest or create a different life for yourself, the key is to figure out who you are and how you work best. And instead of just blindly following what someone else tells you to do, you have to kind of learn how to tweak what you're doing to match who you are and what works best for you. And what I have learned about myself is that there's a balance or a fine line between going too slow and not seeing momentum, and in going all or nothing and not being able to sustain it. And what I need to find for myself is that happy medium middle spot of putting enough on my plate that I start to see results quickly, like making enough significant change all at once, that I start to see the change and I start to understand in my brain, okay, this is worth it. I'm seeing results. Like it's got to be enough that I see the result, but not putting so much on my plate that I can't sustain it. And that has multiple layers to it. So one is trying to figure out what is that place, like what's the most significant place that I can begin to make easy changes that will start to show momentum very quickly. And then on the second hand, not just how can I create time to make this sustainable? How can I not put too much on my plate to make this sustainable? But also during this next period of time, be it 3 months or 6 months or whatever I choose, how can I take some things off my plate so that I'm not just taking what's already a full plate and then adding these new habits onto it and expecting myself to become superhuman? And I think that many of us who fail, loosely using this term, I know it's not a good term, but many of us who feel like we fail when it comes to sustaining new habits, changing our lives, becoming the person we want to be, is often because we're either moving so slow that we're not seeing results and it's like, what's the point anyway? And then the minute we fall off the wagon, it's like, none of that made any bit of difference. I don't feel any better. It didn't become a habit that was for my life. It didn't change my life in any way. And it just feels like I just spent 6 months worried about something that didn't make a difference at all. That does not feel good. And then the opposite side of it, which is I'm trying to do all of it all at once. And I made 1 week of significant change and then I burned out and couldn't keep up with it. And now I feel guilty or ashamed of myself. It's like neither one of those is good. So, what is your sweet spot? What is that space where you're doing enough to see a difference, but not so much that you can't sustain it? And that for me is my mission for the rest of this year, is trying to figure that out. So, 6 months for life, where I went wrong was number one, just expecting myself to be able to put the amount of time into things like health and exercise and better habits and meditation and things like that, when I didn't really do anything to create that space in my life. I didn't drop any projects. I didn't like get any extra help. I just was expecting myself out of sheer willpower to make those changes and couldn't do it. And I think I was working or acting on previous assumptions that, well, I did this when I was 30, and then forgetting that, well, back then I didn't have all the responsibilities I have now. I didn't have, the children I have. I wasn't quite in this bad of shape, or, I wasn't this age. And so sometimes we have to sort of rethink. It can be helpful to look to the past and say what worked for me back then. But what's not helpful is to expect ourselves to be in the same place we were 10 years ago and thinking, why isn't this working for me anymore? Without having some sort of process that we can look at and say, truly, why isn't this working? And how can I readjust so that I can get it to work? So 6 months for life became, for me, after trying it year after year after year, it started to feel heavy. And it doesn't mean I won't try it again in the future, but I needed a new perspective and a new way to look at it. And I've talked about this several times as being like cranking up the chainsaw or whatever. It's like, I just need to pull that string and be like, okay, how can I rev myself up and get myself excited for the future? Which is when I started thinking about, okay, one thing that has worked well for me in the past is to think forward to a birthday or an event and who I want to be when that moment hits. And that really worked for me in my 30s. And we'll see how I can adjust it now that I'm in my 40s and try to make it work for me now. So, two major periods in my life when this sort of 6 months for life or focusing on myself and making those type of changes in a very deliberate way made a huge difference for me. One was, like I said, those 6 months or so surrounding my 30th birthday. So it was really a few months before, and then also a few months after I turned 30. And everything leading up to that. So many of you know this story, but when I think I was 28 when I had been married to another person, my first husband, for a little bit of time, and we were waiting tables in Nashville. I had a master's degree, college degree, everything, but we were just waiting tables, and I just really knew this is not the life that I wanted. Like staying up till 6 a.m., partying, hanging out with people, like serving drinks. Like I really just knew this was not the life I was meant to live. And then opportunity came about to go back to teaching school, which I had done before I went to get my master's degree. So my husband and I at the time moved from Tennessee to Georgia to live just like 20 minutes away from my parents, which, if you put things in context, like this is where I'm going to have a few minutes of kind of talking about trauma in the past. And I can look back on it in 2020, sort of see why my behavior was the way it was back then. But at the time, I didn't process that. When I was more like, in my early 20s, I had been to Europe and had been sexually assaulted. And the military basically just threw that under the rug. Go home. We're not going to pursue this. You were lying. Like, you passed a lie detector. We don't care that you had a concussion and all these ripped clothes and you were all beat up. Like, we're just going to say this didn't happen because it happened in Italy, and we're just going to sweep this under the rug. And so I came home to very, misunderstanding parents who were, it was not a support system. I did not come home to a support system, and I did not get therapy. I didn't get any help at all. I just tried to slot back into my normal life. Okay, how do I keep moving forward? Let's try to ignore that this happened. Let's try to pretend it didn't, which of course doesn't work. And I moved to Indiana, hoping to be closer to my grandmother and a lot of my parents' family, and thinking, well, instead of going to college or graduate school at a school that was really what I had wanted for myself. Like, at the time, I had wanted a career in opera performance. Like, I wanted to be an opera singer and travel the world and sing. And instead of really doing what would have made sense for that, which would have been going to one of the other schools I had gotten into. So I had gotten into San Francisco Conservatory, which is one of the top 3 like opera schools of the country. I had connections at Indiana University that would have potentially been good connections. I had the teachers at FSU, Florida State University, which at the time was the number 1 or 2 school in the whole country for opera. And they had full stage productions. Like, really, if you want to go from graduate school to being an opera singer, you need to be in full stage productions of operas. And instead of choosing one of those schools, I did something that was very out of my own personality. And I chose to go to Butler University in Indianapolis, where they didn't really have much of an opera program at all. They had one sort of in residence woman that was a teacher from the Metropolitan in New York, and she was fantastic. She was an amazing teacher, an amazing singer, and she was a professional opera singer. But there were no full stage productions or anything like that. It was just very small time. But I chose that specifically, I think, now when I look back on it, because I was too scared and too broken to actually go after my dreams at that point. I was like, well, I don't want to give up completely, but I can't handle a big school with a lot of pressure. So I chose easy route, thinking, well, I'll get to live close to my Nana, which would mean a lot to me. And unfortunately, she passed away like literally the week before I left to go. So I had to very quickly find an apartment, get up there during her funeral, get myself settled. I started graduate school in January, which is kind of the off season, and basically was just miserable in the snow. I am not a snowbird kind of person. I fell into super, super deep depression. And this was in my somewhat early 20s. And it's a miracle I survived it. I was in a very dark place. And I used to dream a lot about my life not being around anymore. And somehow, miraculously, probably because my voice teacher at the time, so this was before the opera person had come in that following year, but that first 6 months that I was there, I had a different teacher. And he basically one day said to me, you can't come back into this room until you've had therapy, because I don't know what's wrong with you. And at the time, I've mentioned this before, but like at the time, I really thought nobody noticed, because my family didn't notice. Everyone was ignoring me. No one wanted to talk about what had happened to me. It was like everybody just was like, please stop being sad and just be your happy self again, please. And so I was trying to do that. But this teacher, thankfully, probably saved my life and saw that sadness in me. And he was like, you have to go to therapy. But therapy there was students, right? And so it was helpful, but maybe not as helpful. And then once I left school there, I didn't have that support of free therapy, and I couldn't really afford to send myself at that point. So I met this guy waiting tables. He was not at all the person that I wanted for my life, but it was just, I don't know, complicated kind of things. And it's not that I didn't love him, but it was almost like self-sabotage to marry somebody that I knew was not good to me. And I think also at the time there was just a part of me that thought a wedding would be fun. I mean, I know this sounds terrible, and I mean, I hope nobody he and his family does ever listen to this because it's shameful to me, of just like, even though I knew this was not like a deep forever love, and I knew that he was not good to me and he made me cry a lot, and this is not the life that I wanted, there was a part of me that thought, well, maybe a wedding will fix it. Like, I've always wanted to get married. It'll feel like we're settled, like I can start my life, like I can be grounded. And that was just a terrible decision. So we got married. And then we moved from Nashville, where we were waiting tables, to Georgia. And I thought, okay, I'm going to teach school. This is what I needed. I'm married now. It was like me, like trying to claw my way out of, well, like I was on top of the world and then went to Europe, and it was like someone threw me down a well, and I was dirty and covered in mud, and I was trying to use my strength to claw myself out of that well. That is what those years of my life felt like every day. Just keep moving forward. You can do this. You know you are meant for more. Like, just keep moving forward. And I was doing it alone. I had zero friends. I had zero family that was willing to talk or help me. I had nobody. And somehow I just knew I couldn't give up, right? And then we had moved into this beautiful house that used to be the mayor's house. It was built in the 1800s. It was this gorgeous, like, Southern home, and literally moved in July. And then Labor Day, which was, very first of September, the house burns from a tropical storm that blows off part of the roof, dumped so much rain into the electrical system that the roof burned. We didn't lose everything, but all of our stuff ended up going into like Serve Pro, where they were going to clean it all and stuff like that. But we lost a lot of stuff, and we lost use of our house. And so that was traumatic. But then later that night, when we drove back to my parents' house, covered in soot and tears and having been through this trauma, that's when the prosecuting attorneys from the military in Japan called my parents' house and said that the man that had assaulted me was going to trial for assaulting an officer in Japan, and could I fly the next day to Japan to testify. And it was like all those things just sort of being in a crucible, like pushing me, pressuring me. And I look back now and I'm like, I remember so clearly that feeling of like I could literally fall to my knees sobbing at any moment every day of the week. And I was just barely holding it together. And ended up not going to testify at that time because they delayed the trial due to a new witness, surprise witness. So what they ended up doing over the course of that next year, our house was being repaired, which was repaired incorrectly, and there were all these problems. So we were in a lawsuit. It was like super, super stressful. I was in a new job teaching. I was around my mother. We all know what that was like, even though I didn't understand at the time how emotionally manipulative she was. And I was drowning literally like every day, had no idea how I was going to make it to the next day. And what over that course of that year they did was they dropped the trial against him to renew the trial, like to bring a new trial against him with me as a victim, because it was just shy of the 5-year statute of limitations. So then I became a victim rather than just a witness, which meant having to go through the process of indictment and all these different interviews and going to the military base and facing this and telling that story over and over again was very emotional. and then flying eventually to, like, we had just moved back into our house. The fire was in September. We had just moved back into our house around January. And in February, I flew for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to be in Japan and testify at trial. And when I came home, I had to go back to work the very next day, and I had to take personal leave. They didn't pay me during that time. It was just lots of stressful things. We were in this lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. Then that following December, our house burned down again. And the reason that that happened, because I know people always ask, is because the original contractors that we were in a lawsuit because we knew they hadn't fixed the house properly had lied about changing out all of the wiring in the house, and they didn't change it, and it sparked again because it was damaged fire, fire damaged wiring, and it sparked again and started a fire. And in the second fire, just shy of Christmas that year, we lost everything. And so then living in an RV, moving into temporary housing, going through a lawsuit, dealing with this abusive relationship, having gone through this trial and had to bring all that up, but not having any kind of support when it came to therapy or any help otherwise, no one to talk to about all of it. It just started me to realize, like, I'm going to be 30 next year, at this time. And I just was thinking, this is not the life I meant to live. And I had this inner knowing of, you either change your life drastically or you're stuck here. I just felt that way. I don't know that that's ever really true. I don't know that we can ever really be stuck, but it was just this feeling of urgency, like you have to change your life. So I know it's kind of a long story, but living in that temporary sort of like furnished apartment, waiting to see, like, they weren't even working on our house. We were just in this big lawsuit. Like, insurance refused to fix the house. We were just like, we lost everything we owned. And I was living in clothes that were donated from friends. We didn't have a lot of money because of the insurance stuff. And we were still paying a mortgage on a house that was burned. Like, it was just a lot of stuff going on. And that summer, I had the summer off because I was a teacher. And I was like, I'm going to get myself a laptop, like a basic laptop. And I'm going to start playing this game called EverQuest 2. And that summer is when I met George, who is my husband now. And we will have been married 15 years since then. But that was a turning point for me, not necessarily meeting him, but that summer of being cooped up in this small apartment with this husband who was really, really abusive. And I had just made this decision. I don't want this to be my life anymore. And I got to figure out how to deal with what felt like the shame of failure of a marriage, divorce. He was very controlling. And so, like, how am I going to get myself out of this situation? I'm going to have to figure this out, save up money, get myself out of here. And so I had already started making those decisions. Then I met George and we were just casually friends online for a while, and until it turned into something more. But there really was that 6-month period where I was trying to figure out how to change my life. How am I going to go about getting this divorce? Where do I really want to be? Do I want to go back to school? Do I want to, what do I want to do? And George saying to me one night after I had left my husband, and we were talking on the phone late one night, and he says to me, I want you to move in with me. And I was thinking, this is crazy. I've just recently gotten divorced. Like, this is crazy. But he was like, what do you want to be? Like, who do you want to be? And I just immediately was like, I want to be a writer. And I think that moment of finally, after all those years, being able to admit a dream to myself again was huge. And so I admitted that dream to myself, and I started doing everything I could at that period of time to make that dream come true. And that for me was the first real, like, the few months before my 30th birthday and those few months after, of filing for divorce, saying yes to moving in with George, quitting my job, going after being a writer, changing my life in such a significant way, like fighting for my life and saying, I do want to be here. I do want to make this dreams come true. I am going to go for it, even if it's scary. And that was a huge turning point in my life. Another time for me was around starting my YouTube channel, where I basically this was actually really close to my 40th birthday. So it's kind of interesting that it's been happening around those decade moments. It's just something that has that gravity. And here I am just a couple of years away from 50. And so it's maybe that milestone in the future is speaking to me. But that was another piece. I was like, we're not happy in this house that we're living in. We've been trying to have another baby and doctors are all saying it can't happen. It's like, I know I have to get my health in order if any of this is going to happen. I was also super, had been going through a lot of depression again and not understanding some sort of where a lot of that was coming from, and became estranged from my family. And I just made this huge choice that we're going to move to Charleston to live close to the beach. I'm going to start really getting my health in order, and I'm going to start basically a new path for myself. And I'm going to start putting myself out there on YouTube. And part of that decision came because I was sitting outside the back patio of my house in Columbia, South Carolina, and knowing I needed change, not fully understanding where my feelings were coming from at that point yet, but just knowing I needed change, and kind of being in meditation and hearing my inner voice say to me, your next step is really to show people who you are, to really put yourself out there. And it took me from that point 6 months to a year before I actually started my YouTube channel. But I heard that voice and I knew what it meant was, you've got to put yourself out there on a larger scale, because the difference that you want to make in the world, you've got to start showing who you are and what you're going through, and being vulnerable and telling people the truth of how you feel. And it's going to be scary, and there's going to be people that judge it, and there's going to always be people that misunderstand it. But to be the person you were meant to be, you've got to start putting yourself out there as honestly and authentically as possible. And it took me some time, but there was like a 6-month period of time where I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And I allowed myself to focus on it. I allowed myself to really go for it. And I was really like laser focused on the result I wanted. And it made all the difference in my life. Like, just hit 75K on one channel, just hit 12,000 on another channel. Not that the numbers are the most important things, but they are an indicator that what I'm doing is working. And I know that I've made a difference in lives. I know that I am getting my truth out there. And even if not everybody likes or appreciates it, that's not the point. It's that I know for some people this makes a difference. And that's part of why I was put here. And then also we have our sweet Evie, because I changed certain ways of being that were toxic to my PCOS, that were keeping me from getting pregnant. And when I made those changes to my health and really focused in on that, I was able to get pregnant. So now here we are, and you think about those periods being basically 10 years apart, and here we are on another cycle. So this is another 7-year cycle for me. Here is, it's time to make another change. And I can feel it so acutely. Like, it is time. I am on that same edge. I have at this point manifested and created an entirely different life for myself than where I was 20 years ago. But I know there's still more to come. There's still more that I am meant to be, still more stories I'm meant to tell. There's still things that are unfulfilled. There's still ways that I need to be a better mom. Like, I can feel these things. And there's also still more like backbone and confidence to build in myself, because it still bothers me when people are critical of me online. And I know we've talked about this a lot, that that's another big up level for me, is not to get to a point where I don't care what people say, because that's the only way I can change and grow, is if I care about you guys, but to not let the things that are just mean bother me, right? It's one thing for somebody to say, hey, this hurt me, or this wasn't appropriate. And for me to say, oh gosh, really, I should maybe change. Because there are instances where that criticism is helpful for me to grow as an individual. But there's also a lot more situations where there's people just being mean, and, they just want to bring you down. And I am not yet fully at a place, even though I've been on this journey for a couple of years trying to get to that place where I don't let it bother me, and I'm just still working on that. So all this to say, Project 48. So that's the history behind it. Part of the reason that I know is because I've got this urgency, and it started as a whisper, and now it's becoming a shout inside me that says, similar to when I was hitting that 30th birthday, that said, if you don't change now, you're going to miss it. And I don't know that I fully believe that you can. I don't know. I go back and forth. Some people say you cannot miss your destiny. What's meant for you will be for you. But I don't know. I think there are a lot of people who leave this world with unfulfilled dreams and wishes. So is that really true? I don't know. I do think that if we listen to the whispers of our hearts, we listen to our intuition and we keep doing our best, that we can't miss those big moments that are meant for us. We can't miss who we were meant to be as long as we're actively working toward that and trying our best, no matter how many times we fail or fall down or fall short. But I think there's a period where we can give up and just say, I'm not going to go after that anymore. And I don't believe in it. And I don't care. Where we can potentially either greatly delay what we were dreaming of because we weren't working toward it, or we didn't believe it. I don't know. I mean, these are all things that you can't know for sure. You just have intuition around. But I have this feeling inside me right now that says it's go time, basically. And what is frustrating for me is that I have felt that for more than the last year, and I still have not been able to live up to all the changes that I want to make. So when I started really thinking about how am I going to do this, 6 months for life felt too big. So I started thinking, okay, well, then let's focus on my birthday. So here we come, 36 minutes in to Project 48, which is a initiative to start putting into place better habits, better health, better, like really working on my own mindset and beliefs so that by the time I turn 48 on January 23rd, 2025, I will be well on my way toward another significant leap. Now, here's where we're going to get woo-woo. So draw a line in the sand. This is all that was reality. Now we go into a little bit more woo-woo. And that is that, okay, manifestation at its core is just the idea of bringing the things that you dream of into your reality. So it's saying, it could be tangible. I want to make $1 million, and then bringing that into your life to where you're actually making $1 million. It could also be manifesting things like, you know what, I'd really like a free coffee, which I need to drink this because it's getting ice is all melting in there. But saying, I'm going to get a free coffee, or I want to manifest that parking spot, or I really would love to manifest more travel in my life. Like it can be experiences, it can be anything. And it's really just the process of saying you want something, dreaming that you could have something, and then, allowing yourself to listen to your own intuition and take actions that will get you to that next thing. And I believe there's a sprinkle of magic there that has to do with when we energetically open ourselves up to saying, this is what I want. This is who I want to be. This is the thing I want to experience. And we get excited about it and we feel good about it and we open ourselves up to it, that we become like a magnetic force for those things to come into our lives. And it's something that can be difficult to explain. It's something not everybody believes. And however it's happening, I have seen it happen so many times in my own life where it's just like the coffee thing. If I decide I want to manifest a free coffee, something weird will happen where they'll be like, oh, like last time I had written down in my journal, I want to manifest a free coffee today. I went to 7 Brew and they were like, oh, you've got a reward for a free coffee. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Like I manifested a free reward, which I was going to get regardless. But then when I got up to the place to collect my coffee, they were like, oh, do you want a free caramel macchiato? Because we just made an extra one. So it was like a double free. So stuff like that happens a lot. That's simple. But also just the story of finding this house. Like I had a very specific vision about exactly what I wanted in a house. And this is exactly it. Like everything but pool in the backyard, which is something we will build that I will manifest eventually. It's a miracle how that happens. And I just feel like it's one part being on the lookout for it and believing that it can be yours. And it's another part, a sprinkling of sort of magic that you put out there, your energy and your belief. And at the core of manifestation, I believe, are those two things: your energy around it. Like, do you look forward to it? Is it something that you want? Is it something that you long for? Is it something that you know is meant for you that gets you excited when you think about it? That's part of the energy portion of it. And then there's the idea of belief. Like, do you believe this can be yours? Do you believe that you deserve it? And I know when I think about my own future and I think about my vision for who I want to be and what I want to manifest in my life, one of the things that I have dreamed of for a very long time is to truly be a best-selling author. Now, I have sold a million books, but I have never hit bestseller lists in terms of like New York Times bestseller. I've had my books in like one or two bookstores, a few libraries, but I've never had the type of success that you have where you're like going on book tours, or and part of that is because I chose self-publishing and I fully understand that and I don't really want to do anything different than that. But there are self-published authors who have those big book signing lines. I mean, Colleen Hoover was initially self-published, right? Jennifer Armentrout self-published. So there are authors that have that massive level of success that are top 10 Amazon bestsellers and they're viral all over TikTok, and all that stuff. And there's a part of me that really wants that level of recognition for my work, that level of getting my message out there, of my heroines, of having a story be that impactful in people's lives. I would love to have that experience of having a big book signing and a line around the corner, and part of that is ego. And part of that is just, that would be so much fun to be at a Comic-Con and have a big group of people, or to be on stages. And there's these visions sometimes that come to me of like, this is what I want, of being on the red carpet and there's the Beautiful Demons TV show and getting to announce the next book at the Comic-Con, or getting to, be Sarah Con. We had talked about, like, you've got Brandon Sanderson has his own con or whatever. Like, why not a Sarah Con? Like, let's do it. Let's do a Broken Chapter Society con. Like, I am grateful for every single person that's here. And I want to impact even more lives and build even bigger community, because the whole point of me wanting to be an author was not just about telling stories, but about being able to tell stories that make people feel like they're a part of something, to bring connection in a world where we are just preached time and time again about how different and disconnected we are, and how judged we are, and how critical everybody is of us, and how we're not safe to be who we truly are. Like, we live in a world that feels very disconnected. And in fact, so much of the news and comments and so much content out there is specifically for the purpose of making you feel angry and alone and attacked. And I want to provide something different. And I feel like it's my mission in life. And I'm doing that. I just want to do it on a bigger scale. And I know that part of it has to do with my belief. I know what I want. I have the clarity. I have good energy around it sometimes. But where the negative energy starts to come in is when I don't feel like I deserve it or that I'm good enough for it. Case in point, I am currently, as you're watching this, sitting at the Romance Author Mastermind. And as I'm getting packed and things ready to go, I imagine myself standing in the room there with seven-figure authors who are those bestsellers, who have that big life. And I feel energetically very small around some of those people, because I feel like I can't do what they've done. And I can make up a bunch of excuses as to why I can't. Part of it being trauma from being younger, like I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not commercial enough. I don't write sexy enough books. I'm not writing what's currently trending, or I'm not good enough at marketing, or I'm too shy to put myself out there. It's not really shy. I never really think of myself as shy, but I feel reluctant, I guess is a better word sometimes, to do advertising for my books. And I think I feel small. And so then I'm like, okay, where is that coming from? And this, for me, is part of what's at the core of Project 48, is this desire to work through those feelings that are untrue, to work through, why would I feel small in a group of people just based on the money they're making? Because I would never be standing in a room with someone who makes less money than me and think anything is like they're not as good as me. That never would cross my mind. So why do I think somebody else is thinking that of me? And why am I putting what someone imaginary might think of me above what I think of myself? And so these are kind of thoughts that keep going through my mind. But I do think that in order to manifest that next level for myself, that bestseller, that all that other stuff, I have to be able to get out of my head what anyone else thinks, what I think is possible for me, and almost become delusional about the chance of success. Like, this is going to be so successful because I love it, and not judging myself based on like other things outside of myself, if that makes sense. So like I had notes from before and I've just been talking. But this is, hey, it's just like we're at a normal coffee chat. So we've talked several times about The Big Leap, right? And I mentioned this multiple live streams. The Big Leap is a book by Gay Hendricks, and apparently there's like a podcast and he has a second book, and there's lots of other things you can go down. But the book that I read was called The Big Leap. And Gay Hendricks specifically in that talks about how there are a number of things, like 6 specific things, I think it was, that are at the core of your belief that are keeping you from moving to what he calls your zone of genius, like where you are truly meant to be, where you will shine the brightest, where you will be your truest self. And so many of us hold ourselves back at like the zone of competence, like our zone of where we're getting by, we're doing kind of the bare minimum, we're doing a good job at our jobs, we're being a pretty good mom, we're like hanging in there, whatever. But the zone of genius is this next level place where you've kind of fit yourself into that puzzle piece perfectly. And you're like, this is who I was always meant to be. And I will tell you right now that I have had moments in my life where I knew I was living in my zone of genius, where I was being exactly the person I was meant to be. And it has been some of the most magical moments of my life, because it was truly like, I felt so in alignment. It's like I could feel it deep in my heart of like, this is it. This is who you're meant to be. But so often I pull myself back from that, even though I'm obviously putting myself out there. I'm trying my best. I'm working a lot. Like I'm getting there. I'm still holding myself back in a number of ways that we won't get into, because there is still a part of me that believes one core thing, that I am fundamentally flawed and I don't deserve it. And as long as that is somewhere living in my subconscious, that I have to, like, in one of my core beliefs that I am trying to work against, because I don't want to believe it, but it was so ingrained in me, is that what other people think of me is more important than how I feel or think about myself. That my worth comes from what other people think. And it's part of why I over deliver, why I apologize, why I get so upset when people criticize, why I feel so bad when I can't deliver, why I overpromise and then can't follow through. It's all part of that sabotage of like, but if I don't show up on this next live stream, people will be disappointed in me. But when I show up from a place of genuine excitement and love, I think you guys feel that. And I think that it makes all the difference, right? And so it's like, it's not black and white. It's not, oh, I believe this all the time, or I am this all the time. It's just that I I try to hold on to this self-belief as much as I can, put myself out there, believe in myself. And then there are just times when it slides back into this old sort of default thing that's so deep in my subconscious that I almost can't access it, right? So I know maybe I'm going too deep. Let me know. I'll try to follow you guys in the chat. Maybe I'm going too deep into this, but I'm just literally just riffing on this. But anyway, Project 48 for me is a focus tool. It is a way of saying, okay, if 6 months is too long, let's focus on the next 3.5 months, right? And part of what my focus is going to be is on my mind. And that is going to be a matter of getting, like, one of my biggest intentions is getting deeper into manifestation or meditation, of journaling, meditating, listening to like meditation tracks that will help me to rewire this belief. And some of that might be through therapy again. Maybe I need to sign back up with a therapist. I went through obviously years and years of therapy after I met George. I had an amazing therapist in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been through EMDR when we were living in Charleston that was helpful. I've done some RRT sessions, but maybe I need even more therapy on a different focus, right? So like continuing to look for the right doctors, continuing to ask for help and support where I can get it, and really focusing through meditation and awareness of the things that I'm thinking and feeling to rewire this belief so that I can step into a place where I know at my core that I'm good and worthy and I am not fundamentally flawed, but that I am just, all I'm like all humans. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect, and it's going to be okay. It is safe for me to be flawed. It is safe for me to be wrong sometimes. People will not abandon me or hate me just because I say the wrong thing. And that, again, even just saying that is a little bit of a disconnect, because there are some people that hate me and that have abandoned me because they don't like the message that I have to put out there, or they don't like who I am. So to start to have affirmations that say, I'm safe to be who I am, when I know there are also people that hate and dislike me and actively try to hurt me for who I am, is difficult. So I got to start working through that. And that's one of the main things I want to work through in my Project 48. Another thing that I have written down is health. So you guys have heard this to death. George has heard this to death. Is, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. The older I get, the worse that is going to get. It is a hormonal disease disruption. It is an endocrine disorder. It is something that is going to continue to drain my energy, cause anxiety, cause discomfort and pain. And if I don't deal with it and begin to nurture myself and eat better, move my body, drink more water, take the right supplements, and really take care of my body, and go to the right doctors and like get checkups and all of those things, like just basic health things, some of which I've been avoiding. If I don't do that, there could be potentially fatal consequences. And really understanding that I deserve to feel good. And if a key part of manifesting the things I want into my life is energy and self-belief, then one of the best things I can do for myself is begin to nurture my body in such a way that I maximize my energy. Where this becomes a problem is that, I was just listening to a video about change your life in 6 months, it was a popular topic here on YouTube. And one of the things that she said was that she realized, like, all she has to do before she works out or eats is ask herself, what would the best version of yourself do? And I think that's a wise question. It's good to think like that. But that has also been something that has never worked for me. I've had, like, back when I used to work with Tanya, I've had therapists before that have said the same thing, that before you make a decision about eating something isn't good for you, or about skipping your workout or not doing this, ask yourself, like, is this nurturing to me or is this toxic to me? But I have such a strong self-sabotage reflex that I can say, I know it's toxic and I'm going to do it anyway. I know I need to work out and I'm going to skip it anyway. And part of that, I know the majority of that comes straight from this feeling deep inside me that I need to rewire, that says you're fundamentally flawed. And if I choose the bad thing, that just reinforces that I'm flawed, right? Which reinforces my self-image. And what I need to do in Project 48, what I feel very strongly I need to do, is not to just ask myself, what would that best version of yourself do? But I need to change the way I see myself. I need to change my identity into being, I'm worthy of feeling good. That yes, I am flawed just like everyone is flawed, but even flawed, I love myself enough to nourish my body. And I have not been in that place, maybe ever fully. And it's time to get there. It's time to get there, to say, I deserve and am worthy of feeling good and having good energy. And I am no longer going to make the choices that I know are toxic in order to reinforce self-sabotage, because I'm afraid of, like, I think at the core of it, there's multiple pieces of it. One being that I know if I go for it all in, I go all in, I nurture my body, I change my mindset, I'm like becoming the person I want to be. If I still don't be the best-selling author, making $1 million a year, or like reach those results I want, then I was never good enough to begin with, and I'll have to face that. So if I continue to self-sabotage, then I know I am holding myself back on purpose. I don't know if that makes sense exactly, if I can explain it exactly the right way, but there's a comfort level of sabotaging myself, because it's like, oh, well, if I sabotage, then I can't have that life anyway. And I don't have to face whether it's really possible for me or not, because I know deep down I'm not 100% going for it. Whereas if I 100% go for it and I still can't get where I want to go, that feels really scary to me. Also, there's a part of me that's like, if I feel this sensitive about a handful of negative comments and people who dislike me when my audience is this size, if I were to hit that TV deal, all that other stuff, how many more people will begin to criticize? And there's a part of me, it's like, I can't emotionally handle that maybe. And so I continue to play small and hold myself back in significant ways. And I think it's now or never. It's like, okay, Project 48 by my 48th birthday or within the next 6 months or so. Like my birthday is about, let's see, so November, December, January. So about 3.5 months away from now. And so I have 3.5 months to start working on this. So my three things are really meditation, health, and energy. And all of those three things will play together. Now, in terms of tracking and figuring out what those habits are going to be and all of that, I will happily share some of that stuff with you if you want to see it. Originally, I was talking about, and I even did a Broken Chapter Society live stream talking about using this blackout journal. And I am still going to use that journal, but I think I'm also going to do a hybrid thing where instead of tracking my habits in that journal, I'm going to use the journal for photos. Let's see, photos, journaling, tarot cards, things like I've told you guys I want to do kind of a syllabus. So the meditations I'm going to listen to, the To Be Magnetic courses that I'm going to do, some of the human design stuff I'm going to do, I'm going to keep all my notes on that in the journal, but I'm going to track what I'm doing in Notion. So I'll be setting up a Project 48 dashboard. So if you guys want to see that on a coffee chat or in a future video, let me know. And it's going to be kind of a hybrid between the notebook and my Notion. But, you know, one of the theories out there, it's like quantum theory type stuff, is that there are multiple timelines of the universe all going on at once. And sometimes when we feel a longing for something, it's because there's another version of us somewhere out there that has that life. I don't know if this is true. I don't fully know what I believe with it, but it does sound interesting. So, the idea being that every time we make a major choice, we split in two. So, there's a version of Sarah who never got divorced, and there's a version of Sarah who never went to Europe to begin with, right? There's like all these different versions of me. And sometimes what they say is like, if you have a super, like you feel connected to something, you have a longing for it in your heart, like you're missing out on it. It's often because it is meant for you, because there is a version of you that is living that. And so when people talk about quantum leaping between timelines or timeline leaping, what they mean is taking your life trajectory right now and sort of jumping into the timeline of Sarah that has a movie deal and is the best-selling author, right? That I long for that life because there's a part of me that knows I already have it or that it's inevitable for me. And so if I can just line my energy up with that version of myself, that will become my reality. And there's some people that think that's what manifestation is. I'm not sure if I believe that or not, but it is an interesting theory. I do believe though that when we have a longing for something, when we dream that we could have it and we can close our eyes and imagine that that is our life, that there is some piece of that that we're meant to explore. And the more we ignore it, the harder it's like, the more we're going to feel that missing, that longing in our lives. Whereas if we can find the courage to go for it and to be that person and to, you know, go all in on following that dream, that it's inevitable that it will become ours because we were meant for it. That's why we dreamed it. That's why we longed for it. And I think it has to do with how we were made and what we were put here to do. And part of that journey, that struggle is to get over the bad things that we've learned about who we are or what we're worth or the bad things people have said to us or done to us, and to have the courage to go after truly being who we were put here to be. And that for me is what Project 48 is all about. Okay, I didn't think I was gonna edit any of this video, but after speaking for an hour and then having a little bit of time, with regular coffee chats that are live, I don't get a chance to come back and say something else. But before we go, I realized I really wanted to add a little bit of weight to the discussion by saying, I talked about my vision for the future really in terms of like, I want the TV deal or I want fame or I want whatever. But really, I do think, and this is me being super vulnerable in a difficult way, but I'm going to say it because I think it's going to make a difference to some of you. There sometimes is still that piece of me that really only wants the fame and the recognition. I want it. I know that I want it on a deep level so that I can impact more lives, so that I can have, bigger impact on the world. Because the more people you can reach, the louder your message. But I also do know that there's a part of me that thinks still that I need that outer validation of some kind of fame or money or whatever in order to be good enough. And I know that comes from trauma. I understand where it comes from. What I don't always understand is how to reframe it and get rid of it. And so a big part of what I want to do with Project 48 is reframe that to where I don't where if I were to have that big line around the corner and big impact in the world, that it's not going to be fun because it suddenly means I'm good enough and I've now proven myself that I will get to that point. My truest wish, my truest manifestation is that I will get to that point of having that larger audience because of the truth of who I was meant to be, not because I think it validates who I am in some way. And if it is not my destiny to have that best-selling moment or to have 1,000,000 followers or, if that is not my destiny, then I want to be okay with it and to know that I did the best that I could and that I still got my message out to the people who matter most, which is you. And to know that I became the person that I wanted to be, that I had the courage to say, I don't even care about how much fame or money or fortune or whatever, that I had a life or lived a life that was really true to myself and that I didn't compromise that I became the person I most wanted to be. And when I think about the vision of who I want to be, there are, of course, like, the material things, like, I would love to be, a seven-figure author. I would love to have a pool in the backyard and to be able to travel the world and take my kids to Greece and have all these experiences and, do all this fun stuff. Those are experiences I would love to have and love to share. But my truest, like, when I really boil down to the kernel of it, my truest desire is to feel healthy, to feel proud of myself, to feel full of energy, to feel like every day the things that I'm spending my time on are the things that light me up, that make me who I am, that I know that I'm spending every day like emptying myself out and filling myself back up with the things that I love, the things that I was meant to be, instead of a little bit of passion and then a little bit of shame and criticism and a little bit of toxicity and a little bit of self-sabotage. Like, what I really want is to live a life where I'm strong and I'm confident and nobody can shake that, and that I love the life that I'm living on a daily basis, and that I'm proud of the message I'm getting out there. And the scale of that message isn't really the point. It's the message itself, the person that I'm being, the way that I'm giving myself and of myself to others, the way that I'm showing my kids how to be resilient, the way that I'm teaching my daughter to nourish herself, the way that I'm teaching my son to believe in himself and to go after his dreams. Like, those are really the things that matter. And it's easy to sit down in a coffee chat. And I realized I was more focused on the, like, I want to have a line around the corner, and sometimes that's the stuff that comes up naturally because it's the less vulnerable stuff. So this little addendum here is to get to the truth of the vulnerability, which is that what I really want is just to love myself and to let that love radiate, to let that be the message, to be, you know, to be courageous enough to live true to myself, regardless of who likes it or who doesn't like it, and to let that be felt by everybody, because I love myself so much that that love pours over into you knowing just how much I love you and how much this community can bring love to your life. And I know that sounds a little bit cheesy, but like when I think about Project 48 and how much difference I can make in myself in just a few months, I want to start that life as soon as possible. I want to start that life where I'm feeling energetic and fit and I'm no longer sabotaging and I'm, but it's a big ask. It's like I got to find that place between gradual change and sustainable change, but fast. And so that's what I'm gonna be working on. So we'll likely talk about this quite a bit more as we move toward my 48th birthday, maybe a monthly Project 48 check-in, but thank you for letting me come back. Okay. Now I'll stitch this in somewhere. Okay, that's an hour. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Sorry that I was not here with you live necessarily. Hopefully, you've seen me in the chat if I had time to pop in. Tomorrow, we will also have another premiere where I'm going to be talking about how I'm going back to the shadow world. So, we're going to talk about my plans for Shadow Demons 12, my plans for A Mirror of Shadows, and I'm going to show you some of the ways that I'm setting myself up for success with those series as I am wrapping up The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw and moving into my new stories and getting back into book 12 of the Shadow Demon Saga. So we'll talk about my expectations and my joy of that. So come back and join me. That will be at 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. I might also, again, be traveling during this time. I might be heading home from Houston, but I will try to join you in live chat if I can. Otherwise, I'll check back in on the chat. Make sure also that you're going over to my blog at sarracannon.com/blog to enter to win all of the fun giveaways. We've got so many still going on, including the main giveaway. And I did open up an order form for paperback orders. That is linked for you in the description down below. And you only have until the 31st to put in a signed paperback order form. So let me know if you have any problems with that form, and definitely go order some books if you would like them. Thank you for coming to hang out with me. I hope this was a fun discussion and kind of triggered some ahas. I will check back in on the comments soon, and I love you guys. See you later. Bye.